Born in 1985 in Canada, Adrian West entered the world surrounded by privilege, wealth, and expectations. His family's name carried weight, built on the foundations of success. His father, a powerful real estate mogul, and his mother, an heiress to a thriving plastics company. From the outside, the West family epitomized affluence and influence, their lives adorned with luxury homes, private schools, and elite social circles. But beneath the glossy surface, Adrian's world was marked by something money couldn't fix: division. Adrian was the younger of two brothers, growing up in the shadow of his older sibling, Ethan West, where Ethan was groomed to follow in their father's footsteps, embodying the family's business acumen and ambition. Adrian's path took a different turn. Their parents' marriage, strained by conflicting priorities and personal resentments, eventually crumbled into a high-profile divorce that became fodder for the tabloids. The fallout from the divorce didn't just split their parents, it divided the brothers as well. Ethan was sent to live with their father, immersed in the ruthless world of real estate deals, corporate dinners, and boardroom politics. Adrian, on the other hand, was raised by their mother, surrounded by the remnants of old money, social expectations, and a life curated around appearances rather than substance. While Ethan learned the language of power and control, Adrian grew up navigating the emotional void left by his fractured family. Despite the privileges he enjoyed, private tutors, elite schools, and lavish vacations, Adrian often felt like an outsider in his own life. The wealth provided comfort, but it couldn't replace what was missing: connection, stability, and a sense of identity. The brothers' relationship faded over time, shaped by the environments they were raised in. Ethan became the embodiment of their father's ambition: sharp, calculated, and unapologetically driven. Adrian, in contrast, wrestled with feelings of abandonment, resentment, and the pressure to live up to a family legacy he never felt truly part of. Does privilege protect us from the emotional scars of our upbringing, or does it simply hide them behind a more polished facade? How much of who we become is shaped by the family we're born into and the family we lose along the way? Adrian West's story begins with wealth, but his journey is defined by the spaces where money couldn't reach, the gaps left by a broken family, the shadow of an older brother, and the search for meaning beyond the privileges he was born with. Adrian West's career and lifestyle: chasing shadows in the spotlight. After growing up in the shadow of wealth and fractured family ties, Adrian West sought to carve out an identity far removed from the corporate legacy of his family. Leaving behind the cold luxury of his privileged upbringing in Canada, he moved to Los Angeles, drawn to the city's chaotic energy, a place where ambition thrived in the same space as anonymity, and reinvention was part of survival. Unlike his older brother Ethan, who embraced the world of business and influence, Adrian gravitated toward the creative arts, a realm where he could process his inner turmoil and express the complexities he struggled to articulate in real life. His art became both an escape and a mirror, reflecting the darkness he carried from his past. Breaking in, fading lights. Adrian's first notable project was a low-budget indie film titled Fading Lights, a moody, atmospheric piece that explored themes of isolation, identity, and the lingering effects of childhood trauma. Shot on a shoestring budget with an emerging cast, the film didn't make waves commercially, but it earned a cult following for its raw, unfiltered storytelling and Adrian's ability to capture the fragile line between beauty and despair. Critics described it as hauntingly intimate, a cinematic whisper that lingers long after the credits roll. Though it never broke into the mainstream, the film positioned Adrian as an artist unafraid to confront uncomfortable truths, a storyteller drawn to the shadows rather than the spotlight. Dabbling in animation. After Fading Lights, Adrian shifted gears, collaborating on an animated series with a renowned director known for blending dark humor with surreal visuals. The project, while creatively fulfilling, highlighted the stark contrast between Adrian's vision and the commercial demands of the industry. The series enjoyed modest success, but for Adrian, it was a reminder of how easily artistic integrity could be compromised when filtered through corporate agendas. Fractured Mind. Adrian's most significant success came with his graphic novel, Fractured Mind, a dark, violent exploration of the root of evil and the psychological unraveling of a deeply flawed protagonist. The novel delved into themes of moral decay, inherited trauma, the thin line between victim and villain. Unlike his previous projects, Fractured Mind resonated with a wider audience, praised for its gritty storytelling and stark, evocative artwork. Fans and critics alike were drawn to its unapologetic exploration of human darkness. Some hailed it as a masterpiece of psychological horror. Others criticized its graphic content and nihilistic tone. But for Adrian, it wasn't about accolades. It was about telling the story that had been simmering inside him for years. A subconscious confession. Interestingly, those close to Adrian couldn't help but notice the parallels between the novel's tormented characters and his own life experiences, the fractured family dynamics, the lingering shadows of his past, his obsession with understanding what drives people to darkness. Fractured Mind wasn't just a work of fiction, it was Adrian's subconscious confession, hidden in plain sight. Can art truly heal the wounds it's inspired by, or does it simply give them a new form? Is success defined by public recognition, or by the ability to tell the stories we're too afraid to face in real life? For Adrian West, success was never about fame or fortune. It was about making sense of the chaos within, a process that shaped not just his career, but his identity. His art is both his shield and his scar, a testament to a man trying to understand the very darkness he can't seem to escape. Personal life, the complex world of Adrian West. Beneath the artistic success and moody reputation of Adrian West lies a personal life marked by contradictions, love intertwined with resentment, wealth overshadowed by emptiness, and a relentless search for fulfillment that money could never buy. Marriage and fatherhood, a fragile attempt at stability. In 2013, Adrian married Claire Thompson, a woman whose grounded, compassionate nature seemed to balance his darker tendencies. Claire, a freelance writer and editor, was drawn to Adrian's intensity, his creative mind, and the vulnerability he rarely showed the world. For a time, their relationship appeared to anchor him, offering a glimpse of stability amidst the emotional turbulence he carried from his fractured upbringing. That same year, they welcomed their son, Leo West, into the world. Becoming a father should have been transformative, a fresh start, a chance to build the family he never had. But for Adrian, it was complicated. While he loved Leo deeply, the weight of fatherhood triggered unresolved emotions tied to his own childhood, especially the strained relationship with his absent, domineering father and the emotional void left by his distant mother. Adrian often oscillated between moments of tenderness with Leo and bouts of emotional withdrawal, unable to fully reconcile the person he wanted to be with the man shaped by his past. His art remained his escape, but it also became a barrier, distancing him from the very connections he craved. Despite his creative endeavors, Adrian's lifestyle was largely sustained by his family's wealth. He was financially dependent on a trust fund, receiving $20,000 per month, a cushion that allowed him to pursue his passions without the pressures of financial survival. However, this steady stream of money was both a blessing and a curse. It provided comfort but also fueled a deep-seated resentment, a constant reminder of the family legacy he despised yet couldn't escape. The dynamic shifted dramatically after the death of his mother in 2014, which not only left an emotional void, but also complicated his financial situation. The trust fund's conditions changed, and Adrian's dependence on it became a source of frustration. It wasn't just about money, it was about control, identity, and the lingering influence of a family he tried so hard to distance himself from. Legal battles, the inheritance lawsuit. Following his mother's death, Adrian's strained relationship with his father, already fraught with bitterness, escalated into a full-blown legal battle. He sued his father over inheritance claims, convinced that he was entitled to more than what had been allotted. The lawsuit was messy, public, and emotionally draining, further fracturing any remnants of familial connection. Adrian eventually received a $5 million settlement, a sum that would be life-changing for most people. But for Adrian, it brought little satisfaction. The money was never the point. What he truly sought was validation, a sense of acknowledgement from a father who had never truly seen him for who he was. But instead of closure, the lawsuit only deepened his sense of disillusionment. Despite his wealth, Adrian remained dissatisfied, haunted by the realization that no amount of money could fill the void left by a lifetime of emotional neglect. The inheritance battle was just another chapter in a story defined not by the things he gained, but by the connections he lost. Can wealth ever truly compensate for emotional absence? Is dissatisfaction a product of unmet expectations, or is it rooted deeper in the scars we carry from the past? For Adrian West, life has always been a paradox, a man surrounded by abundance, yet constantly grappling with emptiness. His personal journey is a testament to the idea that the greatest battles aren't fought in courtrooms or through artistic expression. They're waged within, against the ghosts of who we were and the shadows of who we're trying to become. Adrian West's Downfall, A Life Unraveling. Despite his artistic talents and privileged background, Adrian West's life was always teetering on the edge, a delicate balance of creative brilliance, emotional instability, and unresolved trauma. But as the foundation of his financial security crumbled, the facade he had carefully maintained began to collapse, exposing the darker layers of his personality that had long simmered beneath the surface. The financial spiral and emotional unraveling. Adrian's downfall began with the loss of his financial stability. The trust fund that had sustained his lifestyle was no longer enough to support his growing expenses, legal fees, and the high cost of maintaining his image. The settlement from his inheritance battle, once seen as a victory, quickly dwindled due to reckless spending, poor investments, and a refusal to adjust to a more modest way of life. This financial pressure didn't just strain his bank account, it eroded his sense of control, a fragile anchor that kept his deeper insecurities at bay. Adrian became increasingly erratic, aggressive, and controlling, lashing out at those closest to him. His frustrations weren't just about money, they were about a man who had built his identity on external success, now facing the uncomfortable reality of personal failure. In the midst of this chaos, Adrian made a devastating choice. He left Claire, his wife, while she was pregnant with their second child. Their marriage, already strained by his emotional distance and volatile moods, shattered completely when Adrian pursued a new relationship with Isabella Novak, a striking Ukrainian model with a sharp intellect and a complex past as a former prosecutor. On the surface, Isabella seemed like a fresh start, someone who could reignite Adrian's sense of purpose. But beneath the allure was another toxic dynamic waiting to unfold. A double life, lies, manipulation, and abuse. Adrian's relationship with Isabella was intense, passionate, and ultimately destructive. Their whirlwind romance quickly escalated, and soon Isabella became pregnant, adding yet another layer of financial and emotional stress to Adrian's already fragile world. Instead of finding stability, Adrian spiraled further, unable to reconcile the responsibilities of fatherhood with his desire for freedom and control. But Adrian's self-destructive tendencies didn't stop there. While juggling his relationships with Claire and Isabella, he also maintained an affair with Sophie Reed, a charismatic and enigmatic woman who was both his muse and his escape. Sophie, unlike Claire or Isabella, represented the chaos Adrian seemed to crave, a space where he didn't have to pretend to be the man everyone expected. His double and even triple life was a web of deceit, manipulation, and emotional abuse. Adrian crafted lies with ease, shifting personas to suit each woman, each situation. But the cracks in his facade grew too large to conceal. The dark turn, abuse, and control. After Isabella gave birth, Adrian's behavior took a darker turn. No longer fueled by the excitement of a new relationship, he became increasingly manipulative and abusive. His need for control manifested in both emotional and psychological ways: gaslighting, isolation, and verbal degradation. He resented the demands of fatherhood, the financial strain, and the mirror that Isabella held up to his failures. Isabella, once strong and self-assured, found herself trapped in a cycle of abuse, torn between the man Adrian pretended to be and the reality of his cruelty. Despite his charm in public, behind closed doors, Adrian's true nature was impossible to ignore. A man consumed by his own bitterness, desperate to assert power where he felt most powerless. How does unchecked privilege and emotional neglect shape a person's ability to form healthy relationships? Is a person's downfall inevitable when they refuse to confront the darkness within themselves? For Adrian West, his downfall wasn't a sudden collapse. It was the inevitable result of years spent running from his own reflection. His story is a cautionary tale about the consequence of unresolved trauma, unchecked ego, and the illusion that success can mask the emptiness within. In the end, Adrian wasn't just a man who lost everything. He was a man who never truly had it to begin with. The disappearance of Isabella Novak in May 2017 sent a chill through the community, a dread that no parent ever wants to face. She had gone to visit Adrian, a seemingly ordinary acquaintance, but never returned. Days turned into nights, hope dwindled with each passing hour, and a knot of fear tightened in the stomach of Isabella's mother, Olga Novak. Her instincts screamed that something was terribly wrong. Olga's concern for Isabella led her to contact law enforcement. A subsequent welfare check at Adrian's residence revealed a horrific scene. Isabella's body was discovered, and the condition in which it was found was deeply disturbing. The details of the violence inflicted upon her were extremely disturbing and would be difficult for anyone to process. The scene was profoundly upsetting and would likely be traumatic for anyone who witnessed it. The brutality of Isabella's murder wasn't just shocking, it was deeply personal. It wasn't just the taking of a life, it was a calculated act of cruelty, a descent into the darkest depths of human depravity. One can only imagine the terror Isabella must have felt in her final moments, the sheer agony of her suffering. And the impact on Olga, the mother who discovered her child in such a state, is beyond comprehension. No parent should ever have to endure such a trauma, such a violation of the natural order of life. This wasn't just a crime, it was an atrocity. It was a stark reminder of the evil that can lurk beneath the surface of everyday life, the darkness that can shatter innocence and leave behind a trail of broken lives. The question that lingers, the one that haunts us long after the details fade, is why? What could possibly drive a human being to inflict such unimaginable suffering on another? Here are some questions to consider. How does such extreme violence, particularly against a young person, impact not only the immediate family, but the wider community? What does this case say about the importance of trusting our instincts, especially when it comes to the safety of our loved ones? The investigation into Isabella's murder wasn't just a search for a killer. It was a descent into a twisted mind. The crime scene itself was a tableau of horror, a macabre masterpiece of violence that spoke volumes about the perpetrator's depravity. But it wasn't just the brutality that stood out. it was the chilling familiarity. As investigators processed the scene, a disturbing parallel emerged. The details of Isabella's torture bore an uncanny resemblance to scenes depicted in a graphic novel titled Fractured Mind, authored by none other than Adrian. It was a chilling revelation, a moment where fiction and reality blurred, where the lines between fantasy and the horrific became terrifyingly indistinct. This wasn't just a coincidence, it was a roadmap to the killer's dark imagination, a glimpse into the abyss that had consumed him. The forensic evidence solidified the connection. Blood patterns, meticulously analyzed, told a story of violence and struggle. Blue star tests illuminated traces of blood invisible to the naked eye, revealing the extent of the carnage. Handprints, silent witnesses to the crime, placed Adrian directly at the scene of the atrocity. Each piece of evidence, meticulously gathered and analyzed, painted a damning picture, leaving no doubt as to Adrian's guilt. It wasn't just circumstantial, it was irrefutable. The trial was a somber affair, a legal reckoning for the unspeakable acts committed against Isabella. The evidence was presented, the parallels between the crime scene and fractured mind laid bare, and the weight of Adrian's guilt settled upon the courtroom. The jury's verdict was swift and decisive, guilty on all counts: murder, torture, and mayhem. Justice, though it could never fully restore what was lost, had finally been served. The shadow of Isabella's murder, though it would forever linger, was finally met with the cold, hard reality of accountability. Here are a couple of questions to consider. How does the discovery of Adrian's graphic novel, with its striking similarities to the crime scene, impact our understanding of his motivations and the planning involved in the murder? What role does forensic evidence play in ensuring justice is served in cases of extreme violence, and how does it provide a sense of closure for the victim's family? The trial of Adrian West captivated the nation, not just because of the brutality of the crime, but because of the unsettling contrast between his public persona, a creative mind celebrated for his dark, thought-provoking art, and the horrific reality of his private life. The courtroom became a stage where Adrian's carefully crafted image unraveled, revealing the man behind the mask. In 2019, after months of intense legal proceedings, Adrian was convicted of first-degree murder and sentenced to life without the possibility of parole. The verdict was met with a heavy silence in the courtroom, a mix of relief and lingering disbelief. For many, the trial wasn't just about seeking justice for Isabella Novak. It was about confronting the terrifying reality of how charm and intellect can sometimes conceal unimaginable darkness. The prosecution meticulously laid out the case, drawing chilling parallels between the crime and Adrian's graphic novel, Fractured Mind. The disturbing similarities between the fictional violence he depicted and the real-life horror inflicted on Isabella blurred the lines between art and life in ways that left the jury visibly shaken. Forensic evidence, including blood patterns, blue star tests, and handprints, tied Adrian directly to the crime scene, leaving little room for doubt. But beyond the forensic details and courtroom arguments, it was the emotional testimonies that left the deepest impact. Isabella's mother, Olga Novak, stood before the jury, her voice trembling yet defiant, painting a picture of a vibrant, intelligent woman whose life was stolen in the most unimaginable way. Her grief was raw, her words cutting through the legal jargon to remind everyone that this wasn't just a case, it was a tragedy. Following the criminal trial, Olga pursued justice through a civil lawsuit, seeking accountability beyond the courtroom's verdict. In a symbolic yet powerful victory, she won a $45 million settlement against Adrian, a sum that could never replace her daughter, but served as a public acknowledgement of the pain and loss he had caused. What drives someone to commit such acts of violence, hiding behind the veneer of creativity and intellect? Can justice ever truly be served when a life is lost, or is it simply the best we can do in the face of irreparable loss? The story of Adrian West is more than a tale of crime and punishment. It's a haunting exploration of human nature, the masks people wear, and the devastating consequences when darkness goes unchecked. In the end, justice was served, but the scars remain, a reminder that evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it wears the face of someone you think you know. Reflection: the haunting legacy of Adrian West. As we step back from the chilling details of this case, it's impossible not to reflect on the disturbing nature of Adrian West's crime, the darkness that fueled it, and the ripple effect of pain it left behind. This wasn't just a crime of passion or an isolated act of violence. It was the culmination of years of manipulation, control, and unchecked psychological unraveling. Adrian's story is particularly unsettling because of the mask he wore so convincingly. A creative genius, a celebrated artist, a man who turned his inner demons into dark, compelling stories. But beneath that carefully crafted facade was someone deeply broken, driven by a need for control that escalated from emotional manipulation to physical abuse and ultimately to unspeakable violence. What makes this case even more chilling is the way Adrian blurred the lines between fiction and reality. His graphic novel, Fractured Mind, wasn't just art. It was a reflection of his own psyche, a blueprint for the horrors he would eventually carry out in real life. It forces us to ask, where does creative expression end and a dangerous obsession begin? At the heart of this tragedy is Isabella Novak, a vibrant, intelligent woman whose life was stolen far too soon. She wasn't just a victim, she was a person with dreams, ambitions, and a future that Adrian robbed her of. Her story is a painful reminder of how toxic relationships and emotional abuse can escalate into something far more dangerous when red flags are ignored or hidden behind closed doors. This case also highlights the insidious nature of manipulative behavior. Adrian didn't just control through violence, he controlled through charm, deception, and psychological games. His ability to maintain multiple relationships, gaslight those around him, and project an image of success while harboring such darkness speaks volumes about the complexities of abuse. It's not always visible, and it doesn't always leave physical scars until it's too late. How do we recognize the signs of manipulation and abuse before they spiral out of control? What can we do as a society to better protect those who find themselves trapped in toxic relationships? These are hard questions without easy answers, but asking them is the first step toward awareness and change. Thank you for watching and supporting the channel. If Isabella's story resonated with you, consider sharing this video to raise awareness about the signs of abuse and the importance of speaking out. Like, subscribe, and stay tuned for more stories that uncover not just the crimes, but the deeper human truths hidden beneath them. Stay safe, stay aware, and remember, real monsters often hide in plain sight.